I think we talked about this before at one point, but anyways, if there was a recipe, back when I played, Wayne Gretzky's recipe was his backdoor rink, his outdoor rink, a little kid, and then skating on the river, and hours and hours and hours, and going through pylons and doing his little things. Well, is that the recipe? Well, a lot of people did it. I did it. I didn't turn out to be Wayne Gretzky, so that didn't work.
Yeah,
right?
seriously. Yeah.
Matthews, we talked about this, is the small area. When he grew up in Arizona, he grew up in a place where there wasn't a lot of hockey players, so they did a lot of 3-on-3 small area stuff. And well, if that's the recipe, that doesn't work because it worked for him. Or was that why he did it? Because we do our 3-on-3. I've been doing it for 20 years. 3-on-3 cross ice, small areas, and integrate it with skill and stuff like that. And I haven't trained anybody like Auston Matthews, or haven't trained that. If that was a true recipe, then we would have hundreds and hundreds of plays. Well, we take over the NHL because we've been doing it for 20 years. Yep. Does it help? Absolutely. It's a tool. McDavid was the pep, right? These things are not what made the hockey player.
And and Ekblad was PowerTech.
Yeah.
And so there's a good example. How many kids come and train at PowerTech?
Yeah, exactly. Aaron Ekblad was skating with me forever. Yeah, private lessons,
one
small
Aaron
groups,
Ekblad.
and everything.
Yeah, so if PowerTech was the recipe, then we'd have a million Aaron Ekblads.
Yeah, everybody would be a first overall defenseman.
Yeah, So I wanted to point that one out too, because that's us. Like we're PowerTech. It's not the recipe.
Yeah. That's right. So yeah, that's a very good point. I don't really say that too often, but that's very true. But they made it because they are who they are. Aaron, growing up, was always like a bigger guy, like a kind of a gangly skater, but he had the brain, and then he had a skill set that matched it at some point. But he's Aaron Ekblad. That's all. And people may have questioned a little bit 2 years ago if maybe it was shouldn't have been first overall, but he's proven what he is now. He's a great player. But yeah, he did my system.
Yeah,
that's what he did.
Yeah,
right. And I will still say, even though I train him and I know him and I want him to do well, I don't think he's a great skater. But that didn't stop him from being a first overall pick. So does he have to be a great skater? Well, you're supposed to, but why is he not? Why is he not a beautiful skater like his defense not partner, but a depth defenseman like Radko Gudas, who's a great skater, but he can't put pucks in the net or get points. Yeah. Right? Like there's no recipe for it. And the thing is that these guys, I do believe that Connor McDavid doing his pep allowed him to do a lot of stuff with speed and stuff like that, but he skates like no other. It's not because of a toy on the ice.
Yeah.
And Matthews is not one of the best hockey players in the NHL because he played cross ice 3-on-3. Right. And Gretzky wasn't the best. They have a brain. There's something special about these guys. And that's what it is. So when we look at what they did, yes, you can look at it, but you have to understand that that's not the only reason that they made it.
Right.
There's
no secret. And on that point, what we're not saying is that doing any of this stuff is going to hurt you. Number one, that it's not a good thing to do. We're not saying that. And we're not saying to do nothing. We're not saying either of those things. So I don't want people to listen to this and think that we're saying, okay, well then I won't do anything. That's
probably
point.
A bad idea.
Yeah. And I don't want people to think that if you go do PEP that you're doing a bad thing. That's not what we're not saying that. So make sure you just be clear about what our message is here when you're people that are listening.
Yeah.
Our message is not that these things hurt your product in terms of productivity, like you're talking about. It's not going to be something that hurts you. And on the other end, we're not saying don't ever go do any camps or any skills training or use any toys, or we're not saying either of those two things. We're saying you need to contextualize what is the actual reason that some of these players are the players that they are. It's not because they did PEP or 3-on-3 or PowerTech or whatever. It's that they had multiple things about them that made it work. Because there's way more kids that do all of these training systems that don't go anywhere. And that's all we're pointing out. So if you want to go do a PEP camp, that's fine. We're not saying don't go do a PEP camp. But don't think that that's going to be the reason that you turn into Connor McDavid or whatever.
Let's just take three of these things, okay? And beat it to death just for a second.
Yep.
Not to death then. Just beat it a little bit. If you put actual thought into PEP, or let's not call it PEP, let's say PEP, or just stick handling, that type of stick handling. We do pylons or whatever toys are on the ice, jump through, stick through, a little bit of pattern and stuff. if you were to train only that, then you would have no knowledge of how to play hockey.
That's
You
right.
would be good until guys can keep up to you and angle you off and hit you, and any systems are put in place, because that shows you how to skate through things fast, right? That's what you're doing. So if that's all you did, you'd be probably good at that until you're not.
Yep.
Right? If you only played cross ice 3-on-3 in small area games, then you wouldn't understand how plays develop, and you'd probably be pretty good in tight. But when you're not in tight or without the puck, then what? Right? That's a bigger ice.
Yep.
Right? And if you only went in your backyard rink like Gretzky as a little kid, then you're not getting enough skating, right? So obviously, what my point is that if you focus on one thing and one thing only, and you put your faith into one system like that, then you're not benefiting from what true hockey is. So I think if this is a side note now, I think if you look at like a development model for yourself, is there's you've got to be able to, you don't have, you should work on your skating, and I did a thing on that. There's all kinds of different skating, your quickness, your agility, your transitions, your speed,
all that.
all those different things, your turning. So you should be able to stick handle with speed, tight areas, loopy stuff, right? You should understand how to play the game. So all your training should incorporate something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, when you're 6 or 12 or 10, it's probably not important to understand the game as a whole, like putting specific skills into games.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably more important just to have good feels for the puck and stuff.
Yeah.
But once you get to 12, 13, 14, the game becomes like more of a chess match, or you have to understand the game to make you a better player. Then you want to include, how do I do, whatever. How do I execute a 3-on-2 and a 2-on-1 or a back check? That's what makes you a better player. So
yeah, well, the key on that is the things being game transferable. And this is another thing as a side note to your side note. Sometimes when people will call sometimes, and when they talk to me about what their kids are doing, a lot of them go to different places to do different camps and stuff like that, and they'll say it to me a little bit defensively or reluctantly because they know that we also run camps for things.
Yeah, I get it.
And that, they think that this person's better at one thing or the other thing or whatever. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Like, you should be going and trying different things. Yeah. That's fine. You shouldn't just listen to everything one person is telling you, and we're included in that. If you think we have all the right answers, you should be questioning what we say and go figure out what actually works. Yeah. So it's not that you can't go try other things either, but the problem is when people aren't getting back to that point of, does this actually work in the game now? Yeah. So if you're really good at doing twists and turns and stick handling through cones and all that kind of stuff, especially as parents, if you haven't played and you don't know what's actually applicable to a game, it can look like you're making all this progress. Oh, look how good my kid is at 10 and 2 turns and all this kind of stuff. But can you go do any of those skills? Do they actually apply in a game situation when it's not just a tire on the ice? Yeah. And that's what ends up separating us here when kids get older, is because they come here and we actually put them and we teach them in a system through the summer to apply skills in a position where they can actually use it in a game. Yeah, 100%. So that's what is important about all this type of stuff. It's whether you're going to use PEP or 3-on-3 or whatever. Yeah. As mom and dad, or as the player even, you need to ask yourself, do I get to use these skills I'm learning in a game at some point? So if you're someone who's weak at stick handling, you obviously have to go work on your stick handling. But at a certain point, it needs to be introduced back into a game setting. Otherwise, you'll never be able to apply the skills you're learning, and you can go do your cones till you're 16, and you'll never see any result on the ice because you haven't learned how to apply any of it in the game. Yeah. So